Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your Monday and a great start to your week. Here to bring you the latest information on what's going to happen weather-wise over the next 24 hours. But of course, we will extend this a little bit into our Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll get very detailed on tomorrow also. But of course, the primary focus is going to be what happens today into tonight with the significant severe weather expected across the plain. So we're going to give you a lot of information, a lot of detailed info on that, like we always do. Then we'll cover the entire lower 48 after that, like we always do. And then we'll jump into Tuesday. And then, like I said, speak a little bit about Wednesday and Thursday also. It's going to be another week-long severe weather risk, just like, not yesterday, just like last week was. So it's going to be a very similar kind of deal as far as the days that run the risk of severe weather. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Guys, I want to say thank y'all for the prayers with becoming a deacon last night. I was ordained, and it certainly was nervous. It was nerve-wracking, and it actually took me about 30 seconds to really get going when I was going over my testimony. But as soon as I got going, it was good after that. So thank you for the people who prayed over that. For whatever reason, my face gets like bloodshot red when I start speaking in front of people, or if I get nervous, and there's nothing I can do about it. So my wife was all like, "Man, your face looked like a cherry up there." So not sure why that happens, but just nerves kicking in. But God certainly took over, and it was a fantastic night. So thank y'all for the love, the prayers over that. I really appreciate it. If you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Of course, I've not acknowledged any of the comments over the weekend. Typically over the weekend, I just take a break and just do the videos, and I'll get to all the comments on typically a Monday afternoon. So I will check out all your prayer requests, check out all the comments, questions, concerns that you have later on this afternoon. Let me quit yapping my jaw and let's get rocking and rolling. So this is what's going on right now. We got a little moisture kind of pivoting through areas of the Northeast. Little bit of shower downpour action across Maryland. And we got the spin going on across the Rockies with this upper low that's going to create a multi-day severe weather event Monday through Wednesday. We got a little rain already ongoing across areas of the Dakotas, north central U.S. A little bit of moisture showing up down here in Texas. But my bet is that it's actually not reaching the ground. But this is what's going on right now. No real active weather right now. I think when we make the video tomorrow morning, we will have ongoing severe weather, as all the energy that's going to fire up later on tonight will lead all the way into tomorrow morning. But right now, pretty calm, tame conditions. So watches, warnings, advisories. These hot pink colors that it's really bright on your screen, those are red flag warnings. We have that fire danger. Of course, anytime you have a surface low ejecting across the middle of the country, this typically kicks up some strong southwesterly flow to the south of it, typically kind of undercuts that low and brings that dry air. And a lot of times, unfortunately, you guys in like the southern high plains get kind of gypped when it comes to moisture, and this case is no different. Red flag warnings up, definitely a fire danger. Be mindful of this. Even up here, I mean, in areas of the Midwest, north central U.S. We do have winter storm watches up for areas of like the Bighorn Mountains, the northwest Wyoming, and the ranges up there, up into Montana. Winter weather advisories in western Montana. A couple winter storm warnings. Winter weather advisories up for areas of Utah, higher elevations. And we got winter storm warnings up for the higher elevations of the Rockies of Colorado, even kind of leaking into the Laramie Range here in Wyoming. So most of the eastern U.S., besides a couple dense fog advisories, pretty chill conditions, not a whole lot going on. Very quiet start to your week. Going to be a very warm start to your week, too. I think we're going to hit our first 90-degree temperature here locally here in central South Carolina. Going to pull out the water slide for the girls. I already promised them if they clean their room. Yeah, definitely going to have a fun afternoon. But excessive rainfall outlook. Not a big risk of flooding today, just a marginal risk. It means at least a 5% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. So we will watch to see if this upgrades later on, but not a real risk of this. So let's go on and just jump right into this severe weather risk. We'll take a broad look at things. And what I do want to mention is there is a threat of severe weather. I mean, stretching across areas of the Midwest, right down here into areas like the Ohio Valley, all the way across kind of the central Alps region. And then there's a slight risk here in areas of the Mid-Atlantic, kind of eastern Virginia, the southern Delmarva area, and then even northeast North Carolina. So not really a tornado risk with this, just more so just a damaging wind and hail risk. But definitely be aware, and we will have a little segment for that for you folks. Don't want to leave you hanging here in Virginia and North Carolina. There is a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, but of course, the big area of concern is this. Once upon a time, and I mentioned this in yesterday morning's video, once upon a time, we were thinking this was going to be a higher end event. But this has trended a little bit less significant. But I want to let you guys know right off the dot, this is the information as of around 7 a.m. Eastern time. We'll have another update probably just before 9 a.m. They could change this. They could upgrade this. I can tell you on the southern mode of this, the ingredients, there's a lot of ingredients for severe weather. It's just, are you going to get any initiation of storms? If you do, it's kind of a conditional all hazards thing on the table on the southern mode of this. But they actually don't have the enhanced risk up down here anymore. And they have it more so up here where they kind of know storms are going to fire. It's just trying to figure out where. So level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk up here. And then you got the slight risk that extends all the way from the northern plains all the way down to areas of Texas and everybody in between. Then you got that huge, weird kind of strung out marginal risk, level 1 out of 5. But let's go on and zoom in to the highest threat level. And I'm not going to leave you guys hanging in Texas, Oklahoma. I'm going to have a segment breaking down what it looks like for you folks. But let's kind of zoom into the most highest threat level, if you will. So enhanced risk up right through the heart of Nebraska into the heart of Kansas. This does include, areas like Lincoln, was it Hastings? You guys correct me in Nebraska how you say it. You've already have once, but you know me, I'll forget things. I got to repeat it 10 times, remember. But Grand Island, Kearney, Manhattan, Kansas down to Great Bend. Hutchinson has an enhanced risk. Slight risk, level 2 out of 5, all the way from Chad Run, Alliance, Nebraska and western Nebraska. And I will say there is an enhanced risk for a very small section in southern South Dakota, and then a slight risk all the way into South Dakota. But this individual panel only really zooms into this region, so I don't have any cities up for that. But Topeka, Kansas City, all the way down to Wichita has a slight risk also, almost down to Joplin, does include Dodge City. What is this driven off of? Well, as of right now, there is just a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles with any given location. I do want to reiterate this again. I would not be surprised one bit they put a 10% risk of a tornado somewhere into here. I wouldn't be surprised one bit at all. And maybe the next update or two. I do think we're going to get tornadoes up here and up into Nebraska, maybe even Kansas, northern Kansas. So be mindful of that. Check into later updates. And of course, as always, I will put another update kind of in the comments section of this video in the community tab, so you guys will get a really good idea if this does upgrade. But as of now, just a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. And then we go down, look at the wind threat in the yellow, which does extend down into Texas. 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail threat is really what's driving this enhanced risk as of right now. The red, that is a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then the yellow, a 15% risk of that. And of course, you got the black outline hatch risk area, which means there's a risk of significant severe weather, in this case being hail, which means you have a 10% risk in the black outline region of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Now, do remember, this isn't added on to the 30% chance to make 40. This is its own deal. Okay, so what's driving this? Not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I don't want to bore you guys with the details, but I will re-mention this one more time. What's driving this is this area of lower pressure, this upper mid-level low that's pivoting out right now out of like the southern and central Rockies. And then this takes on more of a negative tilt overnight. As it continues to kind of amplify and strengthen for a period, it will develop a surface low right off the Rockies into northeast Colorado, eventually cruising into Nebraska. And then we get into Tuesday morning. This trough continues to eject across the middle of the country, and then eventually getting into our Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. This takes on a full-fledged negative tilt, and continues, and even will bring a risk of severe weather as it's still there as we are getting into Wednesday. And then we have to watch another impulse of energy for our Thursday, but we'll figure that one out here in later videos. So once again, that's what's driving this little blue blob is what's driving a multi-day severe weather risk. So let's break down the HRRR model. And I know there's been a lot of backlash on the HRRR model on social media. But guys, here's the thing. As I'm always going to pick the HRRR model because I think overall it's one of the better short-range models. But you got the NAM, you got the HRRR model, you got a ton of other short-range models you can look at too. And we're gonna kind of compare the 3KM NAM with the HRRR. But in general, these are tough situations to figure out. Especially when it comes to these dry line setups where you just don't know when the cap is going to break, when the storms are going to fire. So we're not going to, make an hour and a half long video comparing all the model guidance, but we will show you what this looks like as far as some of the model guides. But we start off this morning, not really anything going on, which is expected. We start to get some shower development here in like northern Texas, kind of southwest Oklahoma. I don't think this will do much at all. But then here comes the storm. This is around 6 p.m. Remember, back this up an hour. This is in Eastern time. So Central time. Here's some storms down here firing. What will they do? They will probably, if they do fire, basically in this entire region right here in Texas into western Oklahoma, into the Panhandle also. If wherever these storms fire, large hail threat and a tornado risk will be there, and some damaging wind gusts. Very large hail threat. You got plenty of thermodynamic energy down here. You got big time surface heating. You got big time cape levels, and just enough of flow aloft to really pose an all hazards risk. It's just, are you going to break the cap? Are you going to have enough forcing for thunderstorms? And I do think a few strong to severe storms will certainly form down here, but they don't really maintain themselves. By the time they cruise kind of into, man, it just will not let me stay on the 06Z to save my life. Here we go. Let's get back to that. How long do they maintain themselves? For example, this storm gets really close to Abilene, but then it falls apart. So it looks like these storms kind of explode for a period here. And I know you're not seeing anything in western Oklahoma, but storms could very well form there. They kind of explode right out here in west central Texas, and then they kind of fall apart pretty quick. And by the time they get to the Dallas-Fort Worth area later in the evening, they're pretty much not really doing anything. But you do see some convective cells firing up here in areas of Oklahoma. And then you see more storm activity trying to get going like, around midnight tonight. And, don't forget about these storms either. Very small, compact looking storm that could form. And if it does, very large hail again. And then that kind of heads on off and then fades into oblivion. Okay, so just got to watch this area right into here. I wish I had my cursor up so I could draw on this, but got to watch it. And if any storms do form, there's that little signal off the storms that do form. Updraft Felicity swath shows it. Shows that area rotation you got to watch out for with any storms that do get going. Now, if we do go back and look at this and we kind of compare this with the NAM, what is the NAM showing with a storm scenario? We'll back this up. And same thing, shows some kind of sloppy convection here in Oklahoma and North Texas. And then shows a couple cells firing down here, but it's not much. It really isn't. It likes the idea of this second kind of, I wouldn't even call it a wave, but second opportunity for some storms to fire in west central Texas. But do they maintain themselves? So overall, I think that's why they kind of made this a slight risk down here, because just the low confidence of anything actually firing. But we go on and head on up the road to the north and look at Kansas. Kansas is another example. Are we going to have any storms that fire? I think they do definitely in northern Kansas. But, same thing. We'll look at the HRRR model. We'll take it all the way to this afternoon, 3, 4 p.m. Nothing's going on. Okay, we get to about 6, 7 p.m. around dinner time. Nothing's going on. And then we get to about 8, 9 p.m. The sun's beginning to set. Bang, there is a big storm in southern Nebraska. Let's focus more so on Kansas, though. Nothing really going on in Kansas. There's those couple cells firing up in northern Oklahoma. There's one storm right here firing, maybe potentially like just east of Dodge City, and then it really explodes as you get right like in the middle of Kansas, like well northeast of Dodge City. And these are the storms. This is around 11 p.m., getting close to midnight. You see this storm right here? These are one of those storms that could fire up a tornado, potentially a strong one, EF2 or higher. And even though you only got that 5% risk, I'm telling you, you watch for these individual cells that fire up. If one fires up, it's isolated, it's discrete, it can take advantage of all the atmospheric players on the field out there. So be mindful of this. Even though this is just one little isolated cell, man, it could produce all hazards. It could. And it continues, and then it really kind of congeals into more of a line of storms. And, this might not be the exact way this plays out. It's about 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning. These storms kind of begin to sort of just get more strung out. And then it heads on out into Nebraska. And we still can continue to get an opportunity for convection. And then this really becomes more of a dominant feature as far as like showers and storms. You just go more of sort of just waves of heavy rain and showers and storms. And still an opportunity for some severe weather threat as we're getting to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. And you got to watch for all these storms right in here in kind of eastern Kansas. All hazards there. And we're kind of getting into tomorrow at this point. And you see how all these have that kidney bean look? We could have an ongoing tornado risk in eastern Kansas tomorrow, maybe heading right towards Kansas City as we get to about mid-morning. Kind of this little tail whip shrimp, tail light looking thing. This is your classic look with a surface low up here, and certainly an environment favorable, even in the morning hours in eastern Kansas for severe weather. Head on up to, you look at the updraft velocity swath with this. And there it is. There's that kind of first cell that fires up late this evening. And then you see that cell that fires up kind of closer to midnight right here in the heart of Kansas. And then we start to get into tomorrow morning, and you can see how this line develops, and you start to get more of an elevated look of rotating thunderstorms. So definitely be aware of this, guys. You look at the significant tornado parameter. You can see how once you start to get to this evening, this really begins to max out. This is a good example. You go down to Oklahoma really quick. I want to show you something. In Texas, you see how the significant tornado parameter is maxed out. Remember how I've told you many times that just because you show some bright highlighted color on the significant tornado parameter, that does not mean that you're going to get this high-end risk of a tornado. I reiterate this a lot. It just means you have the ingredients there for tornadoes. But are you actually going to get a storm that fires up? And in this case, ingredients are there. But do you have a storm that breaks the cap, that actually fires up? If you have a storm that fires up in this area, it could produce all hazards. So I should have broke that down more so in the Oklahoma and Texas time frame. But it's a great example. But you see how the significant tornado parameter begins to rise up here in Kansas as you get into the evening. So we get up into Nebraska. It's kind of the same thing as Kansas, except Nebraska into southern South Dakota, which we'll include in this too. We'll definitely have plenty of lift and forcing for thunderstorms. And, we take it to about 8 p.m. If you live in the southern counties of Nebraska, you do run the risk of a tornado. I'm telling you, I think they're going to issue a 10% risk of a tornado somewhere in here. But look at these storms in northern Nebraska firing up too, and then they quickly drift into South Dakota. But these storms right here in southern South Dakota, please be mindful of these. And then we keep this going. You watch this cell right in here. It looks pretty significant, pretty big, around 10, 11 p.m. This could produce all hazards. And then we keep this going here. There's that cell kind of developing and then moving north into Kansas. But you got to watch for all this convection, damaging wind threat, large hail threat, and then a risk of a tornado. But I think the tornado threat might lessen into the overnight hours in these regions, but we'll watch. But this continues. And, we start to get a lot more sloppy convection, plenty of lift ongoing with the surface low nearby up here. And all these storms are firing. That's around 2 o'clock in the morning. You see all these storms in eastern Nebraska ongoing. Embedded spin-ups are possible with this. Large hail, wind-driven large hail. You see these storms getting really close to like the Sioux Falls region. Omaha, just scattered rains, but in Omaha, you could certainly get some storms closer to daybreak tomorrow with some significant severe weather being possible. And then we get into Tuesday morning. But definitely a legit tornado threat in Nebraska, for sure. You look at the updraft velocity swath in this region. First off, let's look at the significant tornado parameter. And here it goes. We start to get into this evening. It spikes along that line of storms that I just told you about. That forms up here in northern Nebraska, southern South Dakota. And then it spikes down here also in southern Nebraska. And listen, the ingredients are there for tornadoes. It's just, do you get them? And hopefully we won't. But, way out here, I know it's a lot of these areas are lower populated regions. But folks, please be mindful of this tornado threat that's more so going to develop after the sun sets tonight. There's the updraft Felicity swath indicating rotation with these storms that you are certainly going to run the risk of. We'll briefly talk about this. This is the ingredients in the atmosphere. So the HRRR model isn't doing fantastic at all with low-level moisture, but waking up this morning, getting into this afternoon, you're going to have this tongue of higher dew points, better moisture that extends all the way into southern South Dakota. I would bet a pretty penny that your dew points will be higher than this in the southern South Dakota by the time we get into the sun setting. But remember, you don't need higher end dew points in the plains. You're more elevated, and you just don't need higher moisture content in the atmosphere. But certainly there's that impressive dry line down in Texas areas of Oklahoma. It gets a little bit more mixed in Kansas and Nebraska. But you are going to look at this little pool of dew points in the low 60s up here in northern Nebraska. This is where we're going to probably have a higher tornado threat right in here. But just in general, look at this low-level moisture there. Little tongue up here into this triple point of pretty good moisture content in the atmosphere that's going to support that tornado threat and then that significant severe weather threat. And then we take it all the way into Tuesday morning. You're going to be waking up with dew points, humid air all the way up into Nebraska. And of course, one thing you'll look at here, and the kinematics are there up here. You're going to have this wind flow, this wind field that's going to support it. I'm really honestly just sticking on the thermodynamics for now. But, you look at the mixed layer cape here and how it builds dramatically throughout the afternoon to the point where it's reaching over 2,000 joules per kilogram. In all these areas you see in this orange-yellow color. And then we got this little nose that extends all the way up into southern South Dakota. There's going to be a tornado threat right along here with any storms that get going. And you can see with the dry line. The dry line is a really cool thing where you go from desert dry air to humid, almost Gulf of Mexico type air. And that's why you have this dramatic drop-off of over 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE to 0. One day I'm going to come out here and experience this. You can literally see the dry line. You can see the development of clouds, cumulus clouds, kind of a deck of cumulus clouds, and then it literally goes to clear skies. You can visibly see it. So you folks out west that know about the dry line know what I'm talking about with that. But the energy will be there overnight. I mean, this is getting closer to midnight, and these storms will be eating up all this energy in the atmosphere. So that's a severe weather threat for that. I hope that helps you guys out. Please stay aware tonight. The southeast, quiet for the most part. Beautiful start to the morning. Very warm. A lot of areas will get their first 90-degree temperature of the day today, including my area most likely here in central South Carolina. But we get into this afternoon, nothing going on. A little bit of moisture could drift into Arkansas, as you can see on your screen. Then there's those thunderstorms right into here that get going off of the east side of the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia and West Virginia. Could get some thunderstorms here in the kind of the coastal waterways of Maryland, Delmarva region, southern Delaware, southeastern Virginia. But outside of that, could get some showers that drift into, like Mississippi into tomorrow morning, but not a big deal at all, guys. But let's focus in on the severe weather threat really quick for the Mid-Atlantic. So not a whole lot going on right now, but these storms could fire up as early as around or just after lunchtime in West Virginia. If you live in northern West Virginia, certainly be aware of some strong thunderstorms really early in the day. They could produce some hail, some gusty winds. You see these storms here, and then they will continue to drift. And we could get some good structured storms. There's a lot of talent in Virginia when it comes to the weather community. Very good photographers. Peter's one. His name's Peter. I have him, and I think in my recommended channels on my YouTube channel. He's one of the best photographers in the United States, in my opinion, as far as capturing weather stuff. But he always seems to get fantastic content with these kind of lower end severe weather risk days. So watch out for him. But yeah, we got to watch out for these cells. Not much of a tornado threat with these, but certainly enough of ingredients aloft to support a damaging wind threat and a small hail risk. So Northern Virginia, even up here near Maryland, look at these storms. They might fire right on top of D.C., and then they'll kind of drift throughout eastern Virginia throughout the late afternoon, evening hours. And, if you live in the Delmarva, Maryland, little pockets of stronger to severe storms right in this region. Certainly going to have an opportunity for that today And then by the time we get into this evening, these will try to scoot on all the way down to northeast North Carolina, where they're still probably packing a punch, maybe some additional convection fires here in southern West Virginia. So the northeast today, pretty quiet. Got some pesky showers greeting you guys this morning, some April showers. As we get into the overnight hours, little system moves through New Brunswick, could fire up some thunderstorms that are not really being mentioned much from the Storm Prediction Center, but could have some thunderstorm development along the coastal regions of Maryland. We'll watch out for that. Some convection could be ongoing in Vermont and New Hampshire. So somebody could get an isolated downpour in this region. By the time we get into this evening, maybe some additional showers fly through the Adirondacks, Green and White Mountains, Vermont, New Hampshire. And then by the time we get into tomorrow morning, I think we'll be pretty much in the clear. South Central U.S. pretty much have covered this already, but I'll show it again. There's those opportunity for some storms down here. It's not showing up much. Some snow will begin to fall in the Rockies. Winter storm warnings are up for several inches of snow, maybe as much as 16 inches, I think I saw. But, we get all the way into tomorrow morning and not a whole lot going on. You just got to watch out for that conditional risk of a very strong to severe storm in the southern high plains all the way to the south central U.S. So north central U.S., we've kind of already mentioned this also, but there's those storms that are going to erupt in South Dakota, Nebraska. There's the surface low creating all the havoc here. Most of the Great Lakes region, pretty chill, pretty calm weather, not a whole lot going on. We get all the way into our Tuesday morning, waking up to widespread rains, maybe some rumbles of thunder into southwestern Minnesota, southern Minnesota, and there's those storms starting to enter the picture of the Midwest. It's going to create an opportunity for more severe weather into the Midwest as you get later into the morning and afternoon. More just widespread rains that you're waking up to tomorrow morning in the Dakotas. Some storms in extreme southeast South Dakota will have an opportunity to be there. So, western U.S., this spin, is spinning. Rain in the lower elevations, snow in the higher elevations in the northern and central Rockies, pretty much all these states included. And this will continue to spin. A little bit of snow, heavy at times, begin to fall in Yellowstone National Park, higher mountain ranges of northern Utah, all the way into the Rockies of Colorado. Could get some thunderstorms, maybe even all the way up into Wyoming, even though you're lacking thermodynamics. Could get some hail with these storms in western and western Wyoming, very possible. The rest of the western U.S., not a whole lot going on, but some of the snow will add up for sure, several inches to over a foot as possible in certain sections of the higher elevations of western Montana, northwest Wyoming, Bighorn Mountains, all the way down to the Laramie Range, and the Rockies of Colorado. Several inches of snow is possible. A little bit of snow is possible in the Cascades, too, throughout the next 24 hours. Temperatures today, very warm. Only area which always tends to hang on for winter for dear life that could hang on to those winter-type temperatures is up here in the Northeast. 50s and 40s are possible. But once you start to get into southern New England, 60s and 70s maybe. Once you get down to the Mid-Atlantic, widespread 80s. We're going to get some 90-degree readings here in the southeast today. Very warm day across the Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, Midwest, 70s and 80s. And there's what I'm talking about that intense surface heating in west central Texas today. Temperatures will get well into the 90s. I mean, it'll get really warm all the way up into Nebraska, southern South Dakota ahead of these storms that will try to fire later on this evening. So, pocket of cooler air across the western U.S., but you're starting to rebound temperature-wise across the southwest as you're losing the influence of this lower pressure overhead. Let's briefly mention this. Of course, we got the severe weather threat for tomorrow. All right, and I will mention marginal slight risk extends all the way to extreme northeast Texas. Slight risk for Little Rock, northern Arkansas. It looks like the threat for severe weather has decreased a little bit on the southern mode of this. It's really starting to target this, but slight risk all the way to Chicago, all the way to Omaha for tomorrow morning. Enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 does include areas of Iowa, western Illinois, and then northern and northeastern sections of Missouri. So what is this driven off of? There's a closer look at the enhanced risk. Includes Des Moines all the way down to Columbia, Missouri. Includes Kirksville, Burlington, Davenport, Iowa City. Dubuque, you're in the slight risk, and the slight risk goes all the way to Springfield into Arkansas. This is driven off. There is a 10% risk of a tornado. This is where we're going to have our tornado threat. 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location, and then there's the hatched risk. You also have, in the black outlined area, a 10% risk of a significant tornado, EF2 or higher. Brown area, 5% risk of a tornado. And then, of course, we got the wind threat. As of now, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in that yellow area. And then the hail threat is also driving the enhanced risk. Of course, like I mentioned in today's outlook, red, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Yellow, 15% risk of that. And then whoever lives in the black outline region with the dashes going in between it, that is a risk of significant hail, 2 inch in diameter or larger. So we'll quickly look at what the HRRR model could look like starting tomorrow morning. We're going to have significant weather moving throughout eastern Nebraska. This will eventually move into sections of northern Missouri. And I think we're going to have an ongoing tornado threat even into northwestern Missouri. And you see this nasty line of storms moving through the heart of Iowa. And then there's going to be a tornado threat with these storms in northern sections of Missouri. And then this kind of early morning, well, kind of late morning convection afternoon stuff kind of clears through, slams areas of eastern Iowa, brings some nasty weather also into Illinois. What I want to watch is for an additional cells that fire up behind this. If these storms fire here in like northern Missouri, areas of eastern Iowa and southeastern Iowa, you see these storms right into here. This is around like 6 p.m. These could pose an all hazards threat, definitely a risk of significant severe weather, and then this moves on through. So we'll dive deeper into this here in the next video. I know I kind of left areas of Wisconsin and Iowa hanging, guys. I will dive back deep into this here in the next video, but I do also want to mention there is a risk of severe weather for Wednesday right into here in the Ohio Valley and areas of the Midwest. And then there's another risk that's going to get going here in the south central U.S. We do have a slight risk already from a different system that's going to move in. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a wonderful day.